Hello, fellow bibliophiles, and welcome back to Blatantly Bookish. I'm Marissa, and I am so glad that you are here with me today as I share the books that I hope to read this Victober. What is Victober without an overly ambitious TBR? There are always far too many books that I want to read for Victober, and this year is no exception. Perhaps we'd better call it a pile of possibilities rather than a TBR, because I very highly doubt I'll be able to read all of these. Even so, I thought I'd share them with you and show you which Victorian books are calling to me this year, and maybe throughout the course of this video, I can manage to prioritize them just a little bit. We'll see. Very quickly, before I chat about the books I'm interested in, if you would like a refresher on what Victober is, or some recommendations for the various challenges, you can check out the announcement videos for the year. I'll link mine and all the other hosts' announcements in the description if you're interested. So on to the books. The first book that I'm looking forward to is Armadale by Wilkie Collins. I've read and loved both The Woman in White and The Moonstone, so for my third book by Wilkie Collins, I am opting for Armadale. I don't know much about this book, but what I do know is that it is a sensation novel about an elaborate deathbed confession. Apparently there's murder, betrayal, poison, identity theft, and shipwreck in the prologue alone, so this one should be quite the adventure. This book meets a bunch of the challenges. It has letters in it, I believe, or it's semi-epistolary, or plays with form in some way, I've been told, so it satisfies Katie's challenge. And it was serialized in the UK from November 1864 to June 1866, and it was actually serialized in the US as well, exactly 1 month later. I need to look up how many books were serialized like that, both in Britain and the States, and how far apart the gap between publication typically was, because that's really interesting just to think that the entire US was exactly a month behind the UK when it came to this story. Anyway, it satisfies my challenge of reading a serialized work, and it's a lovely way to honor Jennifer Brooks as well by reading a Wilkie Collins this year. So yes, I think this one should definitely be a priority for me. Another book I might want to pick up this month is The Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy. I am not entirely sure what The Return of the Native is about. I tend to go into Victorian novels not knowing much about the plot, and the back just gives massive spoilers, but this is one of Thomas Hardy's more famous books that I have yet to read, and I know that it features the fascinating and complicated heroine Eustacia Vi, who I'm already inexplicably drawn to. I think it's the name. This book would satisfy Kate's challenge, where religion is a component of the story, as I've been assured that it has plenty of biblical references. But apparently it also has pagan influences evident in the book, so it might be a bit of a critique of Christianity. I'm not sure. Either way, it should be an interesting read, and it should be interesting to read it through a religious lens. Also regarding Kate's challenge, I'm tempted to pick up something by Amy Levy, perhaps either Romance of a Shop or Miss Meredith. Amy Levy was one of the first Jewish women to attend Cambridge. She was an essayist, a poet, and a novelist, and all within such a short period of time because she only lived to be 27. She committed suicide a few weeks before her 28th birthday. Her work was admired by Oscar Wilde, whose work I quite admire, so I'd like to read something by her, if possible, sometime. I have access to electronic versions of her works through one of my library apps, Libby or Hoopla, I forget which, but I'm not sure what I would read by her. Romance of a Shop is about 4 sisters who decide to open a photography business to make ends meet after their father's death. And Miss Meredith is about a middle child who feels rather unremarkable and overshadowed by her siblings, and jumps on the opportunity for an adventure of her own as a governess in Italy. She also wrote a novel called Reuben Sachs, which deals with themes of religion in depth, specifically the tensions between British and Jewish identities. But it's also the book of hers I'm least interested in reading. The other books I don't think overtly deal with religion, but it would be interesting to read something from a Jewish author's perspective. Another contender for Kate's challenge, I could finally get around to reading The Last Chronicle of Barset by Anthony Trollope. This has been on too many of my TBRs. I've been meaning to finish Trollope's Barsetshire novels for ages now, embarrassingly so, and I even started this one last Victober. I think I got about 100 pages, 94 pages through it. But I never finished it because I ended up focusing on Trollope's The Way We Live Now, which was the group read instead. So maybe I'll restart this one this Victober. We'll see. This book is about a relatively poor clergyman who is accused of stealing a check, and how all the townspeople react and take sides on the matter. It features plenty of characters from previous books in the series, and the first 100 pages or so were really wonderful from what I remember. And then for Roz's challenge, I have some Victorian drama that I'm interested in. I think my priority for this challenge will be Mrs. Warren's Profession by George Bernard Shaw. I loved Pygmalion by the same author, so I would like to read or listen or watch something else by him. Roz highly recommends this one, and I think it's supposed to be a wonderful exploration of class and features tension between different generations, which emphasizes the shift from traditional Victorian values of womanhood to the concept of the new woman. It sounds very exciting, and I just have to find a good version of it, either on audio or like a YouTube recording or something. I don't like reading plays as much as listening to them or watching them if I possibly can. I'm also interested in the play Charlie's Aunt by Brandon Thomas. Kate Howe mentioned this one to me. It's apparently about Lord Fancourt Baberley, which is quite the name, whose friends persuade him to impersonate his aunt. The premise reminds me a bit of The Importance of Being Earnest, so it sounds like it'll be a lot of fun. And I found a YouTube recording of it from Oxford Theatre Guild, which seems lovely, so perhaps I'll listen to it if I have the time. And speaking of The Importance of Being Earnest, I am so tempted to listen to it again this Victober. I love Oscar Wilde's comedic plays. A few Victobers ago, I read all of them and made a video about my thoughts on them, and it would just be such a treat to revisit The Importance of Being Earnest, which I'm pretty sure was my favorite, although I love the others as well. I think after The Importance of Being Earnest, my next favorite was A Woman of No Importance, so maybe I could revisit that one too. And then the group read this year is to read The Doctor's Wife by Mary Elizabeth Braddon, which I was very excited about until I learned that it has massive unavoidable spoilers for Dombey and Son by Charles Dickens, which I have yet to read. I really don't want to have Dombey and Son spoiled for me, so maybe that means I have to forego the group read this year? I feel ridiculous doing that because I'm one of the hosts, and also because I love doing a group read with so many people. I always feel this overwhelming sense of community, and I love reading everyone's thoughts in real time and engaging with people who I otherwise might not have, and also just talking about it with the other hosts. It's just so much fun. Maybe I'll somehow read Dombey and Son before the start of Victober, but it's really chunky, and Victober is so soon that if I start it now, I might not end up reading anything else on this list. But then again, is it really Victober if a Dickens novel doesn't make it on this list? So yes, I might try to read Dombey and Son either before or during Victober. I think it was one of my options for my next Dickens anyway. But speaking of Dickens, I'm also kind of tempted by The Pickwick Papers. It satisfies Katie's challenge since it's told as a sort of series of short stories, and then not only does it meet my challenge, but it's the book that is basically credited with popularizing serialization as a form of publication. Serialization existed before the Pickwick Papers, of course, but it didn't really take off until the Pickwick Papers became such a phenomenon. So it's really interesting to read this one for my challenge, I think. And I know that two amazing booktubers are planning on reading this one this month. Last time I talked with Roz, one of my fellow Victober hosts, of course, she said that she was going to make it a priority. And also Emily from Novell Novels, who's a dear friend, is also planning to read it. And as much as I would like to read it with both of them, realistically, I don't know if I'm ready to make this the only book I read this month, because it's absolutely massive. I think it's almost 1,000 pages here, 886. And then finally, I would also like to honor Alice from the Giant Bookshelf this Victober. I think the group challenge is technically worded in a way that you could choose to read Wilkie Collins or Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Like, you don't have to read both, but I do want to honor both booktubers, so if I have time, I would also like to listen to some Sherlock Holmes. I have this huge Sherlock Holmes audiobook collection narrated by Stephen Fry, so I'm sure I'll have the opportunity to listen to a bit of that, even if it's just a short story or something. So let's wrap this video up before I add more books onto this pile of possibilities. I have quite a few chunky books on here. I would love to know in the comments section if you've read any of these books before, what you thought of them, and which you would recommend that I prioritize. Are you participating in Victober this year? And if so, what do you plan on reading? Happy almost Victober, everyone. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you in another bookish video very soon. Bye.